needs to have an amendment to the,
Make the correction.
an addendum to the
5B5?
5B? Is that what it is, 5B5?
5B5, yeah.
Okay. And what do we need to do with the revised letter?
The revised letter can just go along with the inquiry that we already have in here, which is number 5A2.
Okay, so we'll just add the letter attached to 5A2.
Yes.
And the addendum to 5B5. That'll be letter of support for regional water system. And then on the verbal reports, we should change Councillor Carrier and Emter to Gilroy and Court. Any other additions? Changes? Time and adoption of the agenda? Councillor Long?
Move to adopt the agenda as presented.
As amended.
As amended.
All those in favor? Carried. So we have a scheduled delegation tonight. Mr. Bob Hall, welcome. Welcome back.
Thank you.
So maybe these meetings are recorded. You can introduce yourself.
Thanks, Debbie. Bob Hall with Alberta Innovates. I'm a technology development advisor. What I do is I work for the Alberta government. Alberta Innovates used to be Alberta Innovates Technology Futures, and now we've consolidated the different units within the innovation family and created Alberta Innovates. We used to be the old Alberta Research Council, and so we have a group of 500 to 600 scientists and engineers developing new ideas, applied research. And about 6-7 years ago, we created the unit I'm in. It's called Commercialization Unit. And my job is to look at ideas, help people move them forward quicker, faster, better, hopefully not spending as much money as they would if they did it on their own, and to take the good ideas and to help them get to the marketplace. So if you watch Dragon's Den, a couple of my clients have been on Dragon's Den. Quite a few of them want to be on Dragon's Den, but they're not movie stars. Just to give you a bit of background, and the reason I'm here is I'm going to talk, eventually I'm going to come into talking about incubators. And in a roundabout way, the conclusion is I'm happy to hear that you're thinking about an incubator. If you decide to move in that direction, I would certainly want to be one of the coaches, mentors, resource people for an incubator. And with that, then I would bring a team of people. You would have access to a team of people that your incubator residents would have access to. And I'll speak to a couple things happening in the very near future that'll help that along. I've been in the peace country for, gosh, now about 35 years. Back prior to 2000, I set up one of the first alliances, economic development alliances in Alberta. And at the time, the flagship project it had was called the Innovation Network, and we hired Dr. Bruce Rutley, based him out of Fairview. And Bruce helped develop work with clients on innovation. And so I've always had a passion for innovation being a key driver of economic development. Innovation, if you look at it, is very grassroots. It's very much leads to people developing their bright ideas and eventually some of them starting businesses. So innovation, entrepreneurship go hand in hand. Typically, if you look at economic development specific to innovation, entrepreneurship, and running a business, about 5% of the time of a very good business is being innovative. About 20% of the time is being entrepreneurial, and the 75% is just doing your job to make the business, to run the business. So innovation isn't I'm going to say it's not a full-time job. Entrepreneurship really isn't a full-time job. You can't be entrepreneurial and you can't be innovative 100% of the time, or else you'll never get anything done. you'll be just chasing ideas. So we created the Innovation Network, and then over the years it transformed itself into the Center for Research and Innovation, and most recently it is transformed itself into what are called Regional Innovation Networks. And the one, that specific one has become Grand Prairie Regional Innovation Networks. So there are a number of regional innovation networks across the province. And their primary goal is to help entrepreneurial people develop, for communities to develop resources in the community to help entrepreneurs move ideas forward. I mentioned that we've got scientists, mentioned that we have a commercialization unit, and I'll get right into sort of what I do when I work with clients. Typically, the average client I get walks in with an idea. They can see a solution to a problem, and they believe it could make them $1 million. They're just not sure how to do it. And so what we basically do is we start with a concept, and we explore and try to answer the question, who's got the problem, how big is the problem, and are people willing to pay to have that problem solved? And it sounds pretty straightforward, but it's amazing the conversations that go into that. After we work on the concept and sort of that market assessment that there is in fact a market opportunity, we then move into to having the person build the product. We look at the building a prototype, engineering drawings, we look at intellectual property, and we look at product testing. The next major phase is after we work on those, is we look at market entry and distribution. How are you going to bring this product into the marketplace? Are you going to do it in conjunction with an operating partner, an existing business, or are you going to do it on your own? Are you going to set up a retail store, or are you going to do it on the internet? Can you do it in a partnership? And the last thing we do is we help the innovator, the entrepreneur, move from product development into what you call business development. Many of the people I work with don't ever really see themselves as getting into business. They're not business people. They're bright people with an idea to solve a problem. And for most of them, I'm going to say 80% of them, for them to jump in from solving the problem into starting a business, they would fail at starting a business. So we recognize that, and what we'll do is we'll find someone that will partner with them as an investor and or as a license the technology to somebody. But we'll find somebody that's really good at the business of that particular product, and those kind of partnerships really prove to be successful. The only time that's quite a bit different is when the innovator in fact runs a business. If they're already in business and they're running a business and they're doing it really well, then we work with them on the new product, and they can transform that product right within the business. That really makes sense. In the notes I gave you a couple charts there. I broke down innovation in the region last year in terms of the processes that I talked about, and it just gives you an idea of of about 260 clients last year. About 47% were just inquiries. In other words, they had an idea and they usually just had a question they wanted answered. So I would work with them for half an hour up to about 3 hours. I'd get them to do homework, and if they did their homework and they came back, then they became a client. So about 53% of the people I worked with were actual clients, and again, those majority, probably if you look at the statistics, probably about 60% of them were just on the feasibility of the idea. They didn't go past that. In other words, once they understood they feasibly couldn't do the idea, make it, they realized that there really wasn't a business opportunity. And that's okay, because it's a process that they learn, and then the next time they come back, they're better at it, and they show successes. The next chart I gave you it's a breakdown by industry, and it's no surprise that 24% of the clients we deal with are in the oil and gas area. The next big sector is fabrication and transportation and utilities. So those are innovations related to, let's say, the trucking industry, for example. If you look at innovation and entrepreneurship, I think it's fair to say, on average, most people have really, really good ideas. They just need to work with someone to help them develop those ideas. And for a municipality to move on the concept of an incubator, that's the right move. High Prairie area has had access to economic development professionals, Community Futures as part of that. There has been those kind of resources that'll give basic advice in terms of starting a business. But the difference between advice and having a place where business occurs, that's two different things. And again, that incubator speaks to, you're having these people come, they leave their home, they come, in this case, if they came to an incubator, they'd be coming to a place of business. And that move, that physical movement of leaving your home to come into a business, it's just it's a major move, and it's a step in the right direction for people to develop their skills. If you decide to go with an incubator, there is a lot of resources that your tenants can access. Incubators are not rocket science. The NABI incubator in St. Albert is probably one of the best ones around. They've grown. They've got over 220 tenants in 2 buildings. They've got almost every conceivable startup type of business you can imagine. And they do quite well.
Who's the one that started that? Like, did they start that through their municipality, or was
Yeah.
that?
They started through the municipality, and the key to their success is they hired Dar, I can't think of Dar's last name. He just had a big open house. We attended it, and we got a tour of his operation. And he's quite willing to come up to any municipality and give you his advice on how to take textbook incubation and customize it for your particular needs. He would make services available. Certain services, obviously, the tenants would have to pay for, and that's expected. But a lot of the other services, you're going to find that the existing service providers in your area would welcome having an incubator. For myself, for example, if you have an incubator and you have people here, and I don't have to go look for them, when I come to town, if I know who they are and what they do, I would visit them quite regularly, and we would have quite a relationship with them. And the ones that are technology innovators, we'd especially spend time with. But the other ones, we'd still, if we thought there was something we could offer them, we certainly would. And again, that being in that they've come together as a group, and that's the key. I think I'll just kind of wind up by saying that the current government announced back in about February they were going to put some resources towards entrepreneurship, startup accelerators, getting more people working. And it's taken a while, but those programs are they're going to start to appear over the next month or two. They're starting to appear now. So one particular program that will have impact on you is there is an accelerator incubator program. It's going to make resources available to people that inhabit incubators. In other words, the money there isn't going to be money to a community to start an incubator. There's no money to build a building, and there's no money to pay rent. But there is going to be some resources available, some financial resources available to the users of the incubator so they can buy service. So if you were, for example, an incubator in your incubator, and let's say you needed to talk to a lawyer and you wanted to talk to a lawyer about how to develop an agreement, a sales agreement. Typically that person, if you do that on your own, it's going to cost you quite a bit of money. And even then, you're not sure whether or not you're getting what it is you really need, or whether you're just getting something given to you that you're paying a lot of money for. So what potentially could happen is that there'll be resources made available so that the incubator person can actually get assistance to hire the lawyer to provide that service at a more affordable rate than the marketplace would bear. And again, that's that helping that individual deal with the intricacies of starting a business. And so that'll be really important. Other things could include, it might be a patent lawyer to talk about patents. It may be something that's going to fall in the innovation area, and then that's where they would talk to me, and then I would introduce them to all the array of programs we have for innovation. We have scientists, and we also have funding programs for certain technology innovations, so they'd have access to those. I would, if I was involved in it, I would certainly use the resources of your community futures and your banking industry and your business advisory services you have in town to, let's say, accountants and so on, as to these people could be mentors, and they could not necessarily give up time, free time, but they could actually participate in the incubator and get some remuneration, because there's going to be some funding that these people can apply to, and then they can use that money to pay for things to help them start up the business. So it's almost like the innovator or the startup person would get, like a credit card like a credit card, and they'd be able to say, I need these types of services, and they could go to a list of preferred suppliers, and they could use that credit card, and it gives them major discount to access those services. And I think anybody with an incubator that is putting together an incubator is going to be very pleased with that array of services that will be offered, that could be offered to those tenants. And I wish I could speak more to that program, but it's just getting announced, and I see I'm running out of time. So I'll stop and answer any questions.
Councilor Gilroy.
You were talking about expertise from our local businesses. If there were local businesses from either lawyers or accountants that wanted to be put on as mentors or advisors, is there a way in which they would be put on a potential list? Like what's the process?
Well, the process could be simple. Your incubator manager or your champion, or in this case the town council administration, would basically ask people to step forward and indicate their willingness. And participation might mean a discounted price. It may mean volunteerism. You have quite a range of things that you could accept. And I think that the biggest task is letting the individuals, the young entrepreneurs, know that you have a facility, and then letting the service providers, business service providers, know that you have a facility and you want these two groups to get together. And I think if you show leadership in that regard and communicate that, I think you'll be amazed at how things will form up around that.
Any other questions?
Is there sort of a minimum population that you'd like to see? Because we've been to, during some of our conferences, gone to incubators, and they've been in bigger centers, and you see they are quite good. But I just have wondering how many people you need to get that kind of synergy together.
Excellent question, Brian. On the way out here today, I was on about 3 or 4 times I was doing calculations in my head to come up with an answer on that. And the way I probably answer it is, it probably ranges between 2 and 4 innovators, entrepreneurs per 1,000. And I base that on sort of calculations that I've seen at incubators like NABI in St. Albert. And I base that on sort of the number of clients I work with. And I look at the clients I work with and I ask the question, how many of them would step forward if I said to them, okay, your next step is you can come into an incubator. A lot of them would probably smile and say, yeah, that's a great idea. Would they come in? Probably not, because they're not necessarily ready, and they're to make that final step of actually doing business. That's a major step, and so my number in my head is about between 2 and 4 per 1,000 is I think what you would expect into an incubator. Now, the only thing that would really change that significantly would be that if you teamed up with the educational community, and if the educational community made it a priority in terms of encouragement that entrepreneurship, innovative entrepreneurship was important, then you might get a higher percentage of potential future business startups learning in an incubator and then coming back and then graduating, once they've left school, done or finished school, then they would come back maybe as a full-time incubator tenant, and then they'd graduate as a business out of an incubator. So you could increase that number, I think, with some targeted initiatives in the educational community. One of the other areas, and West Alberta, and the Yellowhead, and he works with what are called, what do you call them, business service networks?
Business support networks.
Business support networks, yeah. And they're great because they're those groups of people that have an interest on new ideas and business development. And Chris's group helps formulate, gets them up and running. And then I show up and I don't have to organize them. I can just spend some real focused time with them on innovation. And again, those kind of people, if there was an incubator, they'd be very influential to encouraging people to think of the possibility of entrepreneurship and the lack of risk of incubation. And that's the key. It's gonna, for most incubators, it takes a while for the average person to get over the risks and the fear of failure, to kind of get engaged in an incubator. But if you have these kind of business networks and you have stakeholders in the area that are saying, hey, we're going to build a team around you, and you have that in an incubator, it really makes sense. So,
Is there any incubators in northwestern Alberta?
Not really, no. The incubator that I'm probably most familiar with was the one in Dawson Creek, started by a teacher there, and he was Taylor. Warren, I was going to say Warren Taylor, but that might not be right. But he was instrumental in that, and he ran that for years, and he had some incredible success stories of that. But that was totally driven out of the educational system. There are private sector incubators in Grand Prairie that are leasing space to incubator type clients and giving them administrative services. And to some degree, they might access a professional business expert on certain things but it's not, you wouldn't call it an incubator, like an accelerator. There, that's like a tenant rental kind of arrangement where they get a small office and they have central services. They might have a switchboard and stuff, but they may not have access to a boardroom, or they wouldn't have access to incredible equipment like internet equipment and things like that.
So there, yeah, I'm just trying to, you haven't seen incubators in a community of our size, have you, or is it,
No.
and why is that?
I think it takes a lot of effort, and it's probably one of those things that unless you get a whole bunch of people banging on your door saying they want it, you wonder if you should give it. And if nobody comes forward and says they want it, then it's really hard for you to step forward and say, well, I'm going to, on faith, I'm going to put it out there. So to answer your question in a roundabout way, I would, if I was involved in an incubator in a small community, I would do a very informal survey, and I would determine who's out there that's really wanting this, and who's out there that's going to support it if it does come about. And I'd be prepared for a slow take-up, and I would kind of say, we're not going to measure success within a year. I'd say, we're going to look at, the first year, it's getting people to get out of their basements, get out of their garages, have them come in. And again, that is a big step, because that means you're not daydreaming anymore about your concept. You're actually living it, and it's when you're stepping forward, you're saying, well, I'm actually going to start a business in an incubator. It's not quite like starting it on Main Street, but it's pretty darn close, pretty stressful, and that's a major commitment. And so I think if I was communicating an incubator in a small community, I'd be saying, come out and try us out. It's not necessarily full-time, 80 hours a week. The incubator's open in the evenings. If you've got a current job right now, keep your job, come in and use the incubator to make that transition. You're going to find that there's a lot of people in and around High Prairie that probably are successful as employees that are looking at other ideas. And for you to say to them, stop being an employee and become an incubator person, that's not realistic. So again, if you set up your incubator so that it's available on Saturdays and Sundays or in the evenings, if you talk to people like myself and you say, Bob, if you're coming to town, you got to stay overnight. You got to be available, from 6 o'clock till 10 o'clock in the evening, rather than between 8 and 5. That's what's going to have to happen to grow those kind of opportunities.
Any other questions? I just have one, Bob. Regarding the, you said that your involvement could be mentorship. And
Well-
is that like a hired service, or how would we go about, like what?
No,
what is it?
I'm one of many within the federal and provincial system that's our job to provide expert service in regard to innovation and entrepreneurship. So you can expect us, if you have an incubator, you can expect us to be available to help anybody that's within your incubator. And even if they're not in your incubator, we're still going to help those people. Probably the biggest thing I see is your incubator is an opportunity for you to communicate that you see this is the direction you want to take small business. And that broadcasting of intention is going to have people step out. And when they step out, some of them are going to step out and just want to have an hour meeting. Others are going to step out and say, I want to get into the incubator. But what you're really doing is you're encouraging people to get out of their homes and away from the TV, and you're going to get them to follow a passion without your encouragement. So your encouragement is going to be really important on this.
So what is our encouragement as a municipality? Space, possibly.
Yeah.
Telephone lines.
Yeah, telephone, you might look at, you might have a receptionist type of role, a person there. You might have photocopiers, you might have high-speed internet. You might put together 2 or 3 workstations. You might have, you might do, I don't know if your library provides that now. You might have them get involved with something like that, or one of the educational facilities. Probably about half of the people that come into your incubator will bring their own computer equipment, but there's going to be that initial group that they don't have the resources. You know, they might have a cell phone. They'll be doing stuff on that, and that's not really, you know, to do business on the. You can do business on a cell phone, but not. You need a bit of a laptop or a standalone computer to do. You know, if you're going to do a lot of forms and things like that, transactions and so on.
So the hard stuff, I think we could do.
Yeah.
I mean, you saw the space in that.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be, the municipality would not be doing the soft support.
That's I wouldn't recommend it. I think you're good at leadership, so I would take that role. I think you communicate your leadership, and that leadership is you're saying entrepreneurship and accelerating entrepreneurship through an incubator is the message that you're telling the community. Those are more than enough, and providing the space. And then what you do is then you'll challenge people like myself and Chris and a few other people out there. You challenge them to come in and walk around, have coffee, be there, and you let us, like, we can do our job there, and that in itself is better than us doing our job in coffee shops. Coffee shops aren't bad, but I can tell you that having people in a set location that are there for a purpose, that changes the whole conversation. So.
Okay, so at minimal cost to us, we could move this along
Yeah.
and get a lot of resources, or soft resources from
Yeah.
different other aspects who would then get out and sell the concept more for us.
I'm a little biased, but a typical community spends money on economic development. This is an incubator would be a very good entrepreneurship in an incubator, if you can do it, is a very good, wise investment of economic development money. It's going to have a payback. You can see the payback. A lot of other economic development activity, you know, it's hard to see it sometimes.
Well, we wouldn't see anything here till 2 or 3 years probably.
I would say you could see it as early as the first person walking in.
Good point. Yeah.
You know what I think it's important would be as a community is to define what you're going to measure success as. In other words, develop some measures that you think are reasonable, and then that's what your incubator is about. If your incubator, if the success is simply people come and have coffee, people will come and have coffee. That's not quite success. So I think if you define what it is you want in your incubator and define the types of successes that you're hoping to achieve, it's amazing how when you plan something, those things usually happen.
But in saying that, success, people coming and having coffee and talking about their ideas is success.
Yep.
Because now you're starting to listen to other people's ideas, and you get a synergy coming on about, well, hey, you want to talk about new ideas, go there,
Yep.
because there's people there that want to talk about new ideas too.
Exactly. But they're not just coming and having a coffee is what my point.
Yes.
My point is you don't want to have just a coffee pot and nobody show up, like no service providers. You don't want to have people just showing up that have no ideas, but they're just coming for coffee. So if you can be very specific as to what it is you're showing leadership on and what you're gonna communicate, then people will understand why they should come. And then you can have some accountability to success. And for example, if you say, well, we're only gonna measure success by the company hiring 20 employees, well, you're probably gonna take a couple of years before somebody hires 20 employees. So then you might say, well, it wasn't successful. And then I would argue, no, God, you had a whole bunch of guys fail quickly, and those people saved a whole bunch of money. Entrepreneurship, the average person that comes in to meet me, I either get them to fail really quick, tell them it's a rotten idea, or I get them to succeed. But none of this keep talking and having coffee for months and months and months, and oh yes, you got a nice idea. Yeah. No. No, we're gonna fail. Let's fail quick. There's other things to do and other focuses they can have. So, and that's why, again, your team of professionals that'll be involved in this, your expectation could be that you demand that they have a sense of urgency with dealing with people. Good ideas get decided on. Bad ideas, they get decided on really quick, and and the good ones move forward. The bad ones, you forget them, you learn from them, and these people will come back with better ideas next time.
Thank you very much.
Welcome. Have a great night.
Thanks. What did you decide? Are you going back to, are you going to Whitecourt?
I don't know yet.
Oh, okay.
Okay, are there any public delegations? So move on to protective services, peace officers report, page 5. Constable, right. Councilor Gilroy.
I move that council receive the senior peace officers' May 2016 report for information.
Anybody have any questions? Councilor Duncan.
I'm assuming the next monthly report that you do, because the last time you had presented, I had asked for a breakdown of when you say 50% by law enforcement. I wanted a breakdown of, out of that 50%, 20 was unsightly, 5 was dog warnings, 5 was this. I'm assuming the next report we get, you will be doing that?
I thought it was in this one as a breakdown of bylaw related.
I want something a little bit more specific.
More specific.
Yes,
As
when you
in-
say 50% by law enforcement, I wanna know what that 50% is.
Okay, well, you look at animal control,
Okay,
there's 4 dogs picked up.
well, so how much of
There's-
that is out of that 50%, how much was focused on animal control? 20%, traffic bylaws 5%,
Okay.
unsightly bylaws X amount. I just want something a little bit more tangible than this. That's all I'm asking for.
Okay.
So what we're going to do is get a percentage. I like the 4 and the 7 and that, but if you put an animal control bylaw, 20% of my time was put there, or,
Well, that's what you want.
Yeah.
Counselor Banaka wants
Yeah.
that thing. Yeah, I can break it down, but it's, yeah.
well, so you just add up
Yep.
each one of those and then the percentage of it. Okay.
One thing that you might want to realize is the fact that, this thing doesn't move, if there's only 4 animal control issues, doesn't mean that only 4% of his time was taken up. It could have taken 30% of his time.
That's
So
what I
you-
wanna know.
Yes, but another thing you have to realize, council has to realize, is that all the time that he's gonna spend doing these reports is taking away from him actually doing the job, just so you're aware of that. Because that is gonna be time consuming for him to track all the time he takes doing everything.
Mayor Fox?
Get a chart.
noticed in the provincial offenses that, you had 7 trials this month, so I was wondering what the trials were for, what you were going to trial for.
There would have been not guilty pleas for no insurance, liquor tickets. I can be specific too if you want.
No, I'm not, I was just asking the question to find out what they were.
Yeah, it's 9 times out of 10 it's liquor offenses and no insurance, no registration.
Okay, and do we, what's our win-loss record on those?
Around 95% wins, so I'm happy with it.
Okay. And the other question I had is I've been informed on Facebook that one of our officers was speeding or passed somebody going too fast, and I was just wondering what was the other side of the story of that?
Facebook.
Just asking, right?
She was responding to a dog complaint in Foss, a dog attack, which I think needs to be addressed sooner than later. So that's why she was going maybe 115. From what the other person said, he was doing 112. So I'm not sure if he had a radar detector in his vehicle or not.
I know there's always more to it, I just thought I would ask about it.
Yeah, that's all I'll say on that matter.
Any other questions? Councillor Gilbert?
How are you finding, you and your fellow officer, find the balance with the town as well as the other enforcement contracts you have? How do you find the balance? Do you find it overwhelming? Do you find it a good balance? I'm just trying to figure out how you see it, because you do have the county, you do have Belair, you do have our town. There's quite a bit of a stress load on you and your partner. How do you find that to work out?
Well, I'm finding it works fairly smoothly. It's when we were in Falerian, it's a accumulation of complaints over that period of time that we weren't there. So we're busy when we get there because of they're compiling the complaints, because we can't deal them with when they come in like we do here. So it's a busy day, but
you're not feeling overwhelmed?
No.
Okay.
No.
Any other questions? Anything else, Mr. Moore?
Again, site lanes, as of in May there, you can see that we did 25 notices were sent, or we posted green door knockers on their door, just indicating that there's an issue on their property. And we're getting very good compliance. Month of May, we only sent out of 25 notices, we had sent the contractor to one property to cut the grass.
Mayor Fox?
Speaking of the demolition on 53rd Avenue, is that going ahead or what's happening with that?
I received an email today. She's going to be calling me tomorrow as to her final decision, I guess. If I have a package ready for me to go for a court order. So if it comes to that point, I'll just file a court order and then we'll do the work. I feel it should be done now before the school year starts, for the fact that it is highly contagious mold in that place.
Any other questions? Did I see one?
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Have a good night.
All those in favor of Judy's report? Carried. Public Works report, page 8. Welcome, Mr. Walker. Mayor Fox.
The council received the July 2016 Public Works Report as presented for information.
As council can see, that the 50th Street project has started, and there's definitely a few traffic obstacles to worry about as you travel north to the UW Pratt. We did work with the Elks in rerouting the rodeo parade and using the arena parking lot as the staging area. With cooperation of Southeast News, there was a map that was done, plus we put it on our website and on Facebook. So Facebook does work well in a positive aspect at times. We did recover the river pump. We were fortunate enough to get through that flood with no damage. We took it out, cleaned it up, and reinstalled it. It's pumping, and we're refilling again. Starting to review some of the 2017 capital projects so that we can get them out a little earlier this year than we did the 2016 capital projects. Asked for requests for quotes on the repair of the Evergreen Reservoir roof. We've gotten 3 back so far, and that closes on the 29th of July. It's looking like it will come in probably about $20,000 less than budgeted, approximately. Working on the last little bit of the tendering and design of the upgrades for the 2 lift stations. The construction period cutoff for the number 7 lift station will be October 15th, prior to them moving into the hospital. That is the timeline to have that completed. And I'll entertain any questions.
Councilor Hall.
Where the lift and the pump was at number 4, no, right before we stopped, those 2 buildings that are there now, when are they slated for?
We have gutted them, and it's just a matter of finding some time to knock them over and reclaim that area.
Okay.
So they are scheduled to be demolished.
This
We've
year?
actually, we did take out a demolition permit for those 2 buildings already, and it has been advertised.
Great, thanks.
I just have a couple questions. Installed new gas service to Elk Shower House in their RV park. Is that a billed to them job?
Yeah, that's an invoice to them, yeah.
Okay. And my other question was regarding the Elks Rodeo Parade. Do you have any concerns about the staging area being at the arena? Is there gonna be enough room, traffic-wise, with everybody?
The only thing that we've really lost is a lot of parking for spectators of the rodeo parade. The area up there, is actually the arena parking lot in that area is equivalent probably to what they've used up by the EW Pratt School. We will be blocking that off fairly early in the morning and probably manning it so that there's nobody tries to get in there just to park. I've talked to Bill Eckel, I've talked to Tony Belli and John Patton, who are coordinating the staging area. It's just something that had to be done this year, and if you go up that by EW Pratt right now, you can see that we would have never been able to utilize that.
Yeah. Perfect, thank you.
Councilor Knassett.
Yeah, just curious what ended up happening with the curb issue at the PV Mart. Did they?
Yes, we spoke with them. I went there, I phoned the gentleman, and what they did is they were running out of time to get the curb in there. They're gonna cut it out and put a concrete swale in after the fact, and they did pave there, but it's going to be done properly.
Councilor Gilroy.
Just two quick things. One is a follow-up from the last report. You were talking about how, we were talking about the amount of water we had in our water reservoir. And you said we could not have it completely filled because of the level of the water and the silt level. Has that gone down enough, and are we where we should be in that? And secondly, I just like to know a little bit more about this contacted Lesser Slave Lake watershed in regard to joint project. Just those two questions.
The reservoir wasn't, it was the river that was high in the silt level of the
Yep.
river. We couldn't pump, and yes, we recovered the pump and reset it, and we are pumping and filling right now. As far as the joint project, I've talked with Megan Payne from Lesser Slave Lake Watershed Council, and we're looking at doing a joint project with them between the railway bridge and the highway bridge.
What's the update on the campgrounds as far as the water and sewer? Or is it just sewer that you're working on now?
The water is there. The sewer, when we get time, we go there.
Is that what it is?
It's a project that we initially started before our construction and stuff on our streets started, and we will be going back there as time permits.
I'm just curious whether it was a problem or if it's just time.
No, it's just having people to go there. I would like to touch on the Rupert's Land students that are there. They've been quite helpful. We've involved them in a few areas of public works, but it's mainly been with the girls and the grass cutting and that type of thing so far.
That looks good. Any other questions? Mayor Fox?
How is your porta potty working on a playground?
How's your board?
I haven't tried it yet. It seems to be doing okay. When I first went in there to try it, I was a little concerned about how long it takes the spring-loaded tap to pop back into place to shut the water off, but no, we haven't had any complaints so far. There was one instance where it got pretty messed up inside there, but it's to be expected that you're going to have that
Do
once
they
in a while.
clean it every day?
Every 2 days, we go out there and clean it.
Is that enough?
It seems like it's enough. Like, most people are respecting the fact that it's there. If we get a complaint, they go right away.
All right, and the other question I had was, are you moving towards cutting the weeds in the alleys yet?
That's where they're headed to after they get the rest of the town cleaned up. We did fall behind in grass cutting due to the immense amount of water we had to deal with as well, but they are heading to the alleys. Typically, the homeowners are responsible for doing the back alleys, but I'd rather see them cleaned than not cleaned, right?
Well, and I think that's one thing that council is gonna have to decide, because we do have the policy or the bylaw that says they are to do the front and the back.
Mm-hmm.
And how much longer can we do the front and the back?
Yeah.
And I guess that goes to budget 2017 deliberations.
Okay.
Any other questions? Do you have anything else?
I'm going on holidays, so no. Hopefully the construction project goes fairly smoothly. We are in talks with the MD in regards to the Heart River Water Co-op so that they know what's going on. Flyers have been handed out to all the residents on both sides, the affected areas where there's going to be temporary water hooked up. So I'm crossing my fingers and hoping things go good, but there's a lot of unknowns in the underground in this town. So
Mayor Fox?
When do you start the one over by the Catholic?
they're talking that they're going to be coming in there about the 9th of August, and then be out of there about the 17th or 18th of August, roughly in there before school is in.
And is that both blocks that are the end of the horseshoe? Or
The whole horseshoe.
it's the whole horseshoe, but then
Okay.
across the open part of it, is it 2 blocks or just one? Does it go all the way to Railway Avenue?
Yes, it's from Railway Avenue to Amiros. That's getting done on 47th Street, and then the whole U-shape there at St. Andrews. Very good price on that one, by the way.
those in favor in accepting this report? Carried. Regular meeting of council, July 12th. Do I have a motion to? Councillor Courtney.
The council approved the minutes from the July 12th, 2016 regular meeting of council as presented.
Any omissions? All those in favor? Carried. Special meeting of council, July 14th. Councillor Danaka.
The council approved the minutes from the July 14th, 2016 special meeting of council as presented.
All those in favor? Carried. Finance, property tax development incentive grant. Do I have a motion? Mayor Cox.
The council approves the tax grant applied for under the Property Tax Development Incentive Policy Roll 353600, grant amount $2,382.60 from GL account number 211-770-0060.
Any comments? Questions? All those in favor? Carried. Finance, tax penalty request number 1. Do I have a motion? Councillor Danaka.
The council received a letter from Mr. Sean Bexon asking for the tax penalties of $3,539.31 to be reversed for information only, and directs administration to contact Mr. Bexon to inform him of council's decision.
Comments? Mayor Cox.
Why does it say for information only? Wouldn't it just say to be reversed and direct the administration?
The second one says reversed.
Oh, I see. So, then why are you saying to be reversed?
He's asking for, the letter's asking to
Oh,
reverse
I
it.
see, for the tax
And we're
penalties
receiving
to
it
be
for-
reversed for information
Right.
com. Okay.
Just open the words out there a bit. Any comments?
Yes.
Mayor Cox.
I am concerned that this is in direct contrary to what the decision was for the taxes of the previous, 2 weeks ago, our previous meeting, where a ratepayer came and asked for a relief from the tax penalty, and it was given to that person. And here is a gentleman who has also had problems, and it appears that the motion is not to support this person. So I'm kind of, I'm wondering what was the rationale. So my point would be only that I would not be voting in favor of that motion.
Councillor Long.
If it's a bank problem and they have a great dealing with their client and consider him to be a highly valued client, then I think the RBC, who made $1.5 billion in the last quarter, should kick up the tab and not the taxpayers of the town of High Prairie. Period. It should always be the bank. Their mistake, fight it with them. Don't come asking it from us.
Councillor Danaka.
I just have a question, and maybe I'm not seeing it, but in the tax bylaw that we have, 08-2016, I mean, there's, under the penalties, it explains if you're late, this is what happens, if you're late, this is what happens. And I looked to see if there was a policy or a bylaw that deals with citizens wanting a tax relief. Is there a tax relief bylaw somewhere? I guess my question is, because there's nothing in the tax bylaw, why is this coming to us? Because they weren't paid, so we should be dealing with this. Is my question.
According to the MGA, anything that is not administrative error has to go to council whenever it's a penalty. It automatically goes to council, therefore no bylaw ever has to be written because it's in the MGA.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
You also
Counselor
don't have
Pennell.
the authority to reverse.
Administration has the authority to reverse if it was our error.
Right.
If we made a mistake and we forgot to mail out that tax notice, oops, type thing, and then we'll give them the grace type thing, we'll explain it, we're sorry, whatever. If, we had one person, for example, that they were sent 29 tax notices, and in there somehow, somebody else's tax notice got inserted by accident. They right away sent it to us, that person got an extension without a penalty because that other one person wasn't their fault. Things like that, if it's an administrative error, we have the authority to do so. Anything that's not administrative error has to go to council.
Counselor Pennell.
I was wrestling with this one because part of me goes, well, you know, they were late, they should pay the penalty. And then the other part of me looks at this and says, they are a week late and we're gonna charge them $3,500. Like, that seems crazy amount of a penalty, right? Like, it's not a $100 late fee for being a week late, it's $3,500. And so I guess one of my questions is, what is the late fee normally? And I'm not familiar with the policy if it's late.
You've got to realize that for this particular gentleman, this applies to about 20 properties, not just one. So there's 20 properties involved. And so the fee is 14% on that year's taxes is automatically applied on July 1st. On January 1st, 18% penalty on anything that's outstanding, including previous years, penalties on top of penalties, etc. But July 1st is only 14% of whatever the amount outstanding is. Something that we had happen in one of the other places I worked at that works quite well, let's say your bill is $3,000, you can't pay the whole amount, pay $2,000. You'll only get penalized on the $1,000. At least the other $2,000 will have been paid for.
And is 14% fairly common? Like, is that normal in what you know?
Most municipalities range anywhere from 14 to 16% for the middle of the month, and some, pretty well most of them are 18% for the January 1st. There are a few municipalities one of them I worked at, they would issue, their taxes were due on September 15th because it was a farming community, and then they would apply 5% on September 30th, 5% on October 30th, 5% on every month type of thing until it was paid off, and then they still had the 18% in January. But I'd say about 80% of the municipalities have exactly 14 and 18.
Yeah, just to me, that seems, that's fairly high for being a week late on an error, you know, which they're obviously meant to pay their taxes, they sent the check in. That's my comments, but, so I have trouble with this one.
Counselor Long.
If,
Point of order. The procedure bylaw says that everyone has to speak or have the opportunity to speak first. There's still two more people that have not had the opportunity to speak before anyone else speak again.
Yes, the procedure bylaw says that if somebody wants to speak first, that they would have an opportunity, but nobody has their hands up besides Counselor Long.
I would hope that the chair would ask.
I think that if anybody has a question, they will put up their hand.
Chair's ruling.
Counselor Long.
if I had a car payment to GMC Canada and the bank caused the error for my check to bounce, I would not be going to GMC Canada to waive any penalties that I may have. I'd be going to the Royal Bank saying, you guys screwed up, fix it. And it's no different. The difference is that we're waiving the penalty and the fee and expecting the taxpayers to absorb that. And if we do it for one, we do it for all. No, we don't necessarily have to, but in this case, it's the bank's error. It's not our fault. And so the bank should be the one dealing with his problem, not the taxpayers of the town. I think it's pretty clear. I mean, I'm not being heartless. It's not our responsibility, and it's our fiduciary responsibility to act on the best interests of citizens. Ergo,
listening and reading and looking at this, I do agree. It's not our problem. It's definitely the bank's problem. He did everything, by the look of it, he did everything that he should have done. We've done everything we should have done. It's the bank that obviously was the issue. It's the bank's problem, and they will fix that problem for him. But they would rather ask us to fix it first before they do it, so, and that's just what they do. So, I think the motion is correct. As it stands, that's my opinion.
Any other questions? I have one, just a question for the treasurer. When you talk about other municipalities and their rates that they're paying for taxes and your past experience, was there ever a period of time that it was waived? I agree that it's just large penalties as of the first, and we're finding these problems as of day 2 and 3 because of the long weekend and things like that. So was there ever a grace period that you're aware of in other municipalities?
The grace period would happen if, for example, there was a mail strike, they might decide to have it for an extra week. But all this stuff would have been decided ahead of time.
But not a built-in, just there's a grace
Correct.
period.
The government, both federal and provincial, it is deemed to have been received a week after mailing. And the reason they gave a week is because international to the States usually can take up to a week. It's 3-4 days within Canada. So it is deemed to have been received within a week, and they have 30 days to pay from that time period. In this case, they were given till June 30th, and the tax notices went out on the 20th, so they were given 40 days.
Mayor Fox?
I draw your attention to the fact that the MGA Act in the revisions is specifically going to have a section in there that the ratepayers can appeal a decision of council that they deem is unfair in the normal course of business. This, to me, is exactly the kind of situation that portion of the revision is going to address, where ratepayers are not being treated equally. Last council meeting, a person who wrote a letter sincerely that they felt that they should have their penalty waived, and that penalty was that waiving was granted to them. Canada Post could have been approached to say you didn't mail the letter. They're a corporation. Here's another example where the taxpayer has asked for the penalty to be waived, but immediately we're saying go to the bank. We didn't say go to Canada Post, go to the bank. We don't know if that bank is going to reimburse him or not. It's our decision whether we're going to waive the penalty or not. We're not being fair. We're not treating these people consistently. It's whatever we feel at the time is the way that we're making our decisions. If we had stayed with our procedure and not waived the previous one, we wouldn't be in this position. But if you're not going to treat your ratepayers consistently, why even have a penalty? Why not just let them pay whenever they want? Because all you're doing is asking for more people to come in and say, I would like my penalty waived. How many more are late?
Is that a direct
That's a
question?
direct question.
We have about the 2 other ones that I thought were going to be coming to this council. The one was another bank, and they have paid $11,000 in late fees for all the properties that they were responsible for on the mortgages. And we have another one that I guess they realized they were at fault, and they decided not to approach council and write a letter. However, there are about, I'd say, another 7 more that I do believe might be waiting on the decision of these 2.
I hear what you're saying, but I think that it's different in the fact that our bylaw says that it's supposed to be date stamped if you're mailing it. And Canada Post didn't date stamp it. I feel like we may have to take a look at changing that in our bylaw, because it makes it difficult to, for a consumer to put his tax notice in the mail with his check and guarantee that it's going to get here and we're going to see that stamp, if they don't even know that the stamp doesn't exist anymore. So we may have to change the way that we change our wording, because they told us that they mailed it for late very much looked like they mailed it early enough. It says in our bylaw it's supposed to be date stamped, but we didn't have the ability to double check that. This is a corporation, their responsibility. I deal with this all the time in day-to-day work. When the bank does make a mistake and it costs the consumer money, the bank pays. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Gilroy.
Two quick questions to administration. One is, do we have a date on which this post-dated check was received? And last time when we were making a decision, we were also privy to the fact that the individual that was given the reprieve had a well-established record of having been on time for a previous number of years. Because the way I'm looking at this now is, it was a post-dated check that was going to be going through. And if I write post-dated checks, I'm responsible for having all that money in the bank no matter what. That would be my concern.
To answer the question, in this case, he gave it to us in plenty of time for the June 30th, the date it was dated. We deposited it June 30th. But in this particular instance for this particular person, that is not the issue. The issue was that the bank made the error. Whether he had money in the account on the 30th or whether he had money in the account or not, the bank is the one that made the error. It was a computer glitch on their part. If their computers hadn't bounced the check, he had money in the account.
Any other comments? Councillor Knassif.
Yeah, the other part of his question is, has traditionally this person been on time?
This person just bought these properties within the past couple of years, so I didn't bother checking, but I could if you like.
Any other comments? Councillor Long.
Council has the ability to make decisions without setting precedent. And this is one of those cases and examples as to where we can look at individual cases and determine whether or not we go this way or this way on a decision. And different circumstances require different outcomes and action. So again, I'm not going to defend giving RBC a break. It's their responsibility, it's not ours. As is the next one, in my opinion. But
Anything else?
that's it.
Okay, let's vote on the motion. All those in favor?
Can I have the motion on again?
Read the question back.
Can you read the motion?
Yes, I can. That council received a letter from Mr. Sean Bexon asking for tax penalties of $3,539.31 to be revised for information only, and directs administration to contact Mr. Bexon to inform him of council's decision. What?
Not revised, but first.
Reverse.
I just wanna make sure, this is for information only. Okay, perfect.
All those in favor? Opposed? Tax penalty number 2. Finance, do I have a motion? Councillor Long.
That council received a letter from Mr. Shin asking for the tax penalty of $2,845.76 to be reversed for information only, and directs administration to contact Mr. Shin to inform him of council's decision.
Comments? Councillor Danaka.
I'm just confused by the motion, and I think I was confused by the first motion, because my motion was not to reverse the taxes.
That's enough.
Right, they're
Okay.
asking for us not to.
I'm gonna word it just differently.
The grammar is a little bit off.
Yes.
Yes.
And
If
it's
you
not.
like, we could reword it and make it more understandable if you like. I could do that in just about 30 seconds here.
We received a letter from Mr. Shin. He's asking us to reverse the tax penalty. And we received that letter for information only, and directs administration to contact Mr. Shin.
means, I just wanna make sure that he has to pay.
Yes.
Yes, okay. Okay.
Councillor
The
Long?
the grammar thing is,
What we could add in the motion, if council is willing, after to be reversed, comma, to be received for information.
Yeah, usually our motions end with to be received for information, so I'm not certain why the change in that, but that's obviously thrown us off here a bit. Councillor Long?
If we were to have ruled in favor of the previous Mr. Bexton's and this one, it would have cost the taxpayers $6,375.07. And again, if I have an NSF check for my mortgage and it's the bank's fault, the bank fixes it. But if I have an NSF check because I didn't have the money, as this is the case, I'm sorry. When do we stop and start allowing, if we did it all the time, we'd go broke because everybody would take advantage of it. Do we have to look at every individual case that comes before us? We should. We should give the people that much respect, but we don't necessarily have to agree with it.
Mayor Fox?
Again, I look at consistency, and the person who 2 weeks ago was granted leniency, a waiving on their penalty, was allowed. And it was very plain that that person did not abide by the rules that we had set out in the tax notice. And for the fact that it's gonna cost the taxpayers over $6 grand is not true. We never had this money to begin with. So if we never had it, how can you say it's costing them? This is a penalty that would never have been assessed, therefore we would never have had the money. So all those penalties do is ensure that taxes are flowing into the coffers at a time that we need that money. But it is not costing the town any money to reverse penalties. We are not being consistent with what is put forward. We have a bylaw that allowed us to be able to say no, and we threw that out, and now we, again, are going to be receiving more people, and they're going to be upset that we are not consistent and not treating our ratepayers fair.
Terry, did you have some comments?
I'm not sure if this is where Councillor Long meant, I'm just clarifying, whether the fact that we did not receive the money that it was in the budget. I agree with Mayor Cox that we should not have put it in the budget, but we were expecting a certain amount of penalties, and that certain amount of penalties is in the budget, so it has been accounted for. So it's half a dozen of one, six of the other, but just so you understand.
Is it normal to expect people to be late?
A certain percentage, yes.
Councillor Gilroy?
Once again, I was reading the letter from person, Mr. Shen. He says that he mailed out the business check on the 22nd, and he expected it to be cleared by the end of June. What date did we receive the check, and what date was it deposited?
On the 30th, it was deposited.
So
He just didn't have enough money in his account.
I'm looking at what he has said himself,
That's what he said.
and if the date of the check was the 30th, what was the date of the check itself?
It's in the first paragraph of the RFD.
What was the date on the check? Was it dated June 30th?
I don't know what the date was, but he gave it to us on June 29th, is when we got it in our office, and we deposited it that next morning on June 30th. It's in the RFD.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, we'll vote on the motion. Do you want to read it back?
Yeah. Did we agree to change it the way Terry asked?
The wording.
We will pay that money in.
receive for information.
Reverse
that's
to be
fine.
received for permission, okay. That council received the letter from Mr. Shin asking for the tax penalty of $2,845.76 to be reversed, to be received for information only, and directs administration to contact Mr. Shin to inform him of council's decision.
You good with that? All those in favor? Opposed? Lesser Slave Watershed Council. 5B1, page 32, you'll have the motion. Mayor Cox.
That council appoint, and I need someone who wants to volunteer as a representative to attend the Lesser Slave Watershed Council meetings and be a part of the committee. I'm gathering Councillor Long, that I need to know before I put someone in there.
Can you make a motion that leaves it blank and then we can, that
I
you
don't-
want, if you want to appoint a counselor, why don't we just do it that way and then we can have the
Well,
discussion?
Councillor Long is appointed.
So
It's
that's
up to
right,
him
so
to
we can have
decide
the,
whether he
we can
wants
have
to
that
continue.
discussion, right? So we can we leave it as just a blank and then we'll fill that in. Counselor Long.
Excuse me, Mayor Cox is correct, it's a point of order. You can't leave it blank and then discuss what
I
you.
just said, make a motion that says appoint a counselor.
Yes,
Okay.
or appoint a representative.
Okay. Counselor Long.
When it was discussed about having me appointed as treasurer, I believe, I stated then, and I've stated all along, that it's a huge time commitment that not everyone can attend. I tried to attend daily sessions that they had, the work camps and the boot camps and the different things. Didn't attend this last one that they had. And the cost to travel, and I've been pretty consistent on this, the cost to travel back and forth to Canuso and to attend all of the meetings that they have had would have been in the thousands. We've seen, we can go to our own counselor costs and what we've incurred individually, and you know that that would be the case. And I've been opposed to that for quite some time, since pretty much day one. The issue is that, or the second issue that I have, and I've stated before, that the town of High Prairie and councillors and mayor should not have to be on an executive of a nonprofit society and end up being the person who is responsible for them to have a quorum or not have a quorum. It is not up to the responsibility of the town of High Prairie to make sure that nonprofit organizations run properly. And so the onus then is on the town of High Prairie and or its representative to help that nonprofit organization meet and make their quorum, or they don't have enough people to run the monthly meeting. And that should not be our responsibility, aside from the fact that it's extremely costly. I mentioned to them, and I mentioned right from the get-go at this election, I ran for some very basic reasons. And one of them was that my past experience would hopefully allow us to avoid the situation that faced the previous council. And that hopefully I would help to keep council working within the means and within the MGA. And we all know that there was meetings that just recently were attended in camera that should never have been. So, that being said, the work still needs to be done. But my position on saving the taxpayers' dollars and having nonprofit organizations being accountable to themselves and not putting responsibility upon us to be decide whether they make a quorum or not. I just don't think it's right. I don't think it's our responsibility to do that. As a liaison, absolutely. Utilize us when you need us. If there's an important issue that we need to hear and hear firsthand, as a liaison, they could call us and say, you're our liaison, we'd like you to attend this meeting because X, Y, Z. But we should not, in my opinion, have to sit on the board of directors and be responsible for and accountable for whether or not they make the quorum or not. And that's my position. So, if there's somebody, and the last point before I go is that I stated as I went door to door that my health is not great. I don't know how far it's going to take me, but I'll do the best I can. And as you know, my health hasn't been great lately. I'm fighting it, and I'll do the best I can. And until I hear from the citizens of this town saying, Michael, you suck, get out of the way, I'm not a politician. I do the best I can. And so, that being the case, I'll leave it to council's discretion. By all means, if somebody can do it and wants to take on that responsibility for the watershed, they're a great organization and it's an extremely important issue. But you're taking on the responsibility of being on their board of directors. They will assign you a position, you'll be voted in, they'll ask you to be treasurer, vice president, whatever the case may be. But it's a huge time commitment.
What is the time commitment, Michael? Is it a monthly meeting?
Their monthly meetings, plus their day camps and boot camps and special guest speakers, the AGM, it's a travel to Canuso back and forth every time you go.
Mostly are you
Unless
able to
they
make
have
the
an
monthly
AGM
meetings?
here. Pardon me?
Sorry, mostly have you been able to make the monthly meetings?
I've made the monthly meetings, I haven't been extremely regular, but I can't attend them all the time. And it's not fair for me to continually ask my employer to have day meetings off because, quite frankly, my attendance isn't great at work at times. That's just my reality. They're very accommodating. That being said, I have to take that into consideration, be fair to them as well.
So most of their monthly meetings are day meetings?
Most of their monthly meetings are evening meetings, but they do have quite a few workshops during the day. The boot camps that they have, the AGM, they're all early in the afternoon and into the evening, and then the day camps and the boot camps are at the time.
Councillor Canasic?
Yeah, the other thing that the Watershed Council has is they're working on that new watershed agreement or plan, watershed plan, not an agreement. And so they have a subcommittee that you can get involved with that meets on that also. So you know, it's one of those things where you can get deeper and deeper involved in it depending on what you do, right? So it is a little bit, takes a lot of time on that one. But with that being said, I know that, Michael, I only got one call and I couldn't go on the day that you asked me to go because I was, already had another meeting with Harbor River Housing that particular night. But I can go if I'm given some notice and could probably make some of those meetings if you're not able to attend.
And the last one I missed as a result of the death penalty, so I'm not too concerned about what they think of that.
Councillor Gilroy?
I'm looking at the letter from Tammy Kaliba and about the society bylaws. Board members must provide substantial commitment and actively participate in the society as outlined. Goes on to say all board members must be a member of good standing. It is responsible of the board members to attend meetings regularly. To me, if I was reading these things, it would be more incumbent to be at the monthly meetings as opposed to extra workshops and that. I'm thinking, for example, Councillor Rose and I are on the FCSS one, and they need us as a quorum, as we found out by the last meeting we did. But to be honest, when they had their special meetings during the week, for Seniors Week, I couldn't attend those events. But that doesn't affect my commitment to, the FCSS. It just means that I couldn't, and to me, that'd be like the workshops. You attend, or we've committed you to act as a board member as opposed to a member that's at every single thing. So I see a big difference between what they're saying and what they're requesting.
And I think that maybe there's some value in rediscussing at our organizational meeting some of these committees and the commitment, but right now we have made a commitment until the next organizational meeting, so we should have somebody be the member until that point in time, and whether it be Michael continue or whether it's the alternate or whoever decides that they want to step up and do this, and then we can maybe readdress it. Mayor Fox?
We never, you didn't tell us, Councillor Long, do you want to continue with the organization, or would you rather step back and let the alternate take the main position and you become the alternate?
I would be willing to do that, but I know Councillor Panasic has dedicated a lot of time to hardware housing and it's a huge workload.
The alternate is Councillor Rose, isn't it?
No?
Councillor Panasic?
Nope.
Okay, so, I guess.
In fairness, I don't think it's fair to Brian. I'll continue to do the best I can. They'll have to suck that up, I suppose. I don't want to create ill will, certainly. They do a great job. It's an important issue. It's what they seem.
Councillor Panasic?
Well, being that our organizational meeting is only 2 months away, I would suggest that we keep it as it is for now. And Michael, if you're not able to go, notify me and I can cover for sure for the next 2 months, and we can talk about it then when we look at the workload of all of these
Yeah.
various committees.
They did make reference, and in fairness, I was not available. I wasn't on the phone, I wasn't on emails, we were gone, emotionally and everything else. So missed the last one, and I apologize for not, letting you know that.
Mayor Fox?
It also says in the letter, which has been drawn to my attention, that we could ask for a staff member to be the representative for the town. And I do know that because they're working on this watershed plan, it's very important in the next 2 years that we be involved in this organization. And the municipal working group is the group that is going to be doing the planning for this watershed. When I received the letter, and I went and asked their executive director, Megan Payne, who was at this working group. And unfortunately, due to circumstances, I had expected a staff member also to be in attendance, just to ensure that we had representation, and the staff member wasn't able to go either that day. So there were 5 members from Big Lakes. I think there was 4 from the town of Slave Lake, another 4 or 3 from Lesser Slave River. We were visibly absent because we just weren't there. So maybe we should be talking to administration and asking them if there is a staff member that is able to participate, and then maybe that would solve our problem.
Councillor Panasic?
Well, I see it as 2 different issues. When we're looking at the board of directors position, that's made up not of staff members, but it's made up of elected members and what they're talking about here. When you're talking about participation in the planning and the watershed plan, that might be better suited for a staff member, but I think this position is dealing more with the board of director request at this time.
The letter does say say. We asked the town to appoint a representative who's fully participate and commit to their role as a director. So they're asking for you, to elected or staff, to be the director. Councillor Gilroy.
Knowing that this isn't something that Councillor Long had intended with his health, would it be against the rules to put a second alternate there, since both are on heavy schedules, and this is only for 2 months. It's not like but it's an extreme situation where that if maybe these two can't, then there may be a councillor who can take the spot. Just for these 2 months until the new organizational meeting?
Terry?
I know that where I was working at before, there was many times in a lot of the representations, they did have a second alternate for a lot of the committees, because being such a small council in where I was at, they often had people who couldn't make it, and where I was at, there had people living in Red Deer, Calgary, Edmonton, they were not living in the community. So sometimes it was extremely difficult to get the person to attend, so they always had a second alternate on a lot of their committees. So it's something that can be standard if you wish.
I actually wouldn't mind that at all. At least that way, the third person, if they're called in a couple of times, can get an idea of what's going on with Watershed, and maybe they will step forward at the organizational meeting and express an interest in being the member.
Councillor Panasic.
I just have to stress that we just have to notify, it's only once, and I'm taking from this letter that there's been multiple things, there must be, right?
Yeah.
So,
That's
yeah, if I'm notified, I can probably go, as if I'm given a bit of notice and can reschedule my work, but having a second alternate, we can work with that too.
So do we want to amend the motion? Mayor Hawks?
I'd like to amend the motion that the representative, Michael Long, remain as the representative. So my motion will read that council request Councillor Michael Long remain as the representative to attend the Lesser Slave Lake Watershed committees and be a part of, and just leave that out, watershed committees, meetings. And Councillor Gilroy, are you interested in being the third, because you spoke up and gave us the suggestion? Yes, Councillor Gilroy will be added as a second alternate.
Okay.
So now you got two.
Are we good with that?
There you go.
Okay, all those in favor? Carried. 5B2, Northwest Alberta Regional Sharing Agreement. Councillor Panasic.
I move that council approve the signing of the Northwest Alberta Regional Sharing Agreement and forward a letter regarding approval and signed by a designated officer to the high-level fire chief.
Anybody have any comments? All those in favor? Nope. You're
I-
slow.
I see that it's on High Prairie Fire Department, letterhead. Does that mean that they're in support of this? I haven't talked to anybody, so I don't know.
Mayor Fox.
Fire Chief Malnick brought this up before at a different meeting, and he was in support of this.
Very much so.
You were absent.
Problem.
All those in favor?
Maybe mentally.
I was. You were gonna say that. I knew you were thinking it. Return service bursary extension. Oh, did I miss one?
Native Friendship Center.
Oh, sorry, Native Friendship Center. Yes. Councillor Gilroy.
Okay, I move that council direct administration to provide a letter of support to the Native Friendship Center to apply for an enabling accessibility fund grant to create wheelchair accessibility and to renovate the washroom and kitchen.